are such strong feelings about drug testing, whether it's government that does it or private industry. Our interview tonight is about drug testing. James Reif is a labor lawyer. He has frequently dealt with job disputes involving the use of drugs. Thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome.
The drug crisis is a national crisis, no debate about that. Doesn't it require a special governmental effort?
Well, I think there has been an increase in the use of drugs recently, but I think the question is what kind of response is warranted, what kind of response is going to be effective.
Well, what bothers you about what Mr. Meese proposed today as the guidelines?
Well, there are a number of things I think that are questionable about his proposal. The most important of which is that there's no requirement that a person be suspected of drug use before they're going to be required to submit to this rather humiliating procedure where they go into a bathroom and someone follows them in and stands there while they urinate into a bottle.
So you're saying they're being asked to prove their innocence rather than the government being asked to?
Yes, I'm not necessarily opposed to drug testing under all circumstances. I think if there's valid suspicion that someone is using drugs, then that's an appropriate basis for testing them. But a person who's performed satisfactorily on their job for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and there's not the slightest indication that the person is using drugs, there's no reason why that person should be subjected to that kind of invasion of privacy.
What about the argument that we all know that drug use is rampant? You said that yourself. But we demand, as citizens, we demand protection from the people who are supposed to protect us, federal air controllers, the CIA, the FBI, and it does indeed require some kind of a special effort to do so.
Well, when you say special, I'm not sure what you mean. I don't think people would say, well, because there's a high rate of drug use in New York City, that the police ought to have the right to go into everyone's home in the city searching for drug paraphernalia without any basis to think that they're going to find anything when they go into someone's house. And I think the same is true here, that there may be a drug problem. I wouldn't call it a national crisis, although I do think there is a problem. But I don't think it warrants, either as a matter of policy or as a matter of law, the ability to test somebody who's not under any suspicion of having used drugs.
I guess another way of putting the question is, isn't there a higher public need at times that might outweigh even the constitutional objectives? I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Well, I think one thing that's important for people to realize is that that's the limitations of drug testing. Putting aside for the moment the reliability of testing methodology, which is a hotly debated question, it's important for people to understand that a so-called positive result from drug testing does not show impairment of job performance or impairment of any bodily function. All it shows is that at some prior unknown time, someone ingested a drug in an unknown quantity. They may have ingested it while they were on vacation, several days before they were tested. In the case of marijuana, the evidence of marijuana use remains in the urine for weeks.
But would you want to fly with a pilot who might have used marijuana or had been found to have used marijuana even on his vacation 2 weeks earlier? As a passenger, wouldn't you say, gee, I'm glad to know that, I'm not going to fly that airplane?
Well, I think it's a question of balancing people's interests. I think there's an importance to public safety in, for example, transportation industries. On the other hand, there's an importance to the right of privacy of the employee. And the question is, how do you strike the balance between the two? And I think most of the courts have said, and I support this conclusion, that you have the right to invade the privacy once you have reasonable suspicion to think that that person has used drugs. But short of that, you do not have the right to invade the privacy.
Attorney Reif, the Attorney General, the chief law enforcement official in the United States, said today, these guidelines provide the greatest possible privacy for the individual and the greatest accuracy in test results. You obviously don't believe in any of that.
It's obviously not private if someone's following you into the bathroom. You know, apparently he made a great to-do about the blue dye in the toilet bowl and testing the temperature of the sample once it's given. I think that's correct. I think those two things, the blue dye in the toilet bowl, if he's worried about having, I don't know why he has a toilet bowl there at all. The person's not supposed to be urinating into the toilet bowl. They're urinating into a vial. But in any case, assuming he wants to have a toilet bowl there, there's no need to have somebody stand there in order to ensure the authenticity of the specimen. The testing by the temperature, and the blue dye if he wants the toilet bowl are more than adequate to ensure the reliability of the specimen.
Attorney Reif, thank you very much. James Reef, thanks for coming in and joining us tonight. We'll have more news in just a moment concerning the president's change of heart over what he knew and when he knew it, and later the building that's driving some people crazy.
Kellogg's cornflakes is what cereal's supposed to be. It's natural, it's crunchy, it's what I eat.
My grandmother actually turned me on to it. She calls it health food. I usually like to put fruit on it, cream, and eat it right straight down. And that is delicious. I eat it by the megabyte. Kellogg's cornflakes, that's my cereal, and that's also my girlfriend's cereal. And that's great, because we agree on something.
Cornflakes from Kellogg's. It's what cereal is all about.
Loose, rich breast turkey. So lean, so light. Slice it for tonight.
Wow, turkey!
For tomorrow.
Wow, turkey!
Anytime. Carved, cooked, whole from the bird. Its natural shape says it's juicy and delicious. Lewis Rich makes turkey so easy, so tonight.
Turkey!
So luscious. So light. It took Lewis Rich to make turkey so right.
Get both low 3.9% financing and cash rebates up to $600. 3.9% in cash at Bert, Wyman, Ford. Chevy trades, great Chevy buys, all with air, all full price. A 1982 Malibu Classic, only $29.88. Bert offers this 1981 Monte Carlo at $24.88. This 1979 Malibu wagon, only $18.88. Hard to beat Chicago's #1 Ford dealer's price, Bert, Wyman, Ford.
What would you do if cocaine were free? Guess what he did. He turned down food, water, turned down all the things he loved, even sex, and took all the cocaine he wanted until he died. Take the cocaine monkey off your back. Call Parkside. We know how to help professionally. There's no charge for a consultation. There's no obligation, and no one but you has to know. Parkside. We'll help you solve your cocaine problem.
If Rick's is the low-price warehouse showroom, Harlem must be the lower-than-low-price showroom, because our prices for these same exact sets are so much less. $400 less for this 3-piece international living room set. $500 less for this 4-piece Thomasville bedroom. Don't pay $900 more at Rick's. Pay $900 less at Harlem.
Harlem has style.
Furniture.
Harlem has quality.
Discounts.
Nice price place since 94. Harlem Furniture, you like our style.
Would he run or wouldn't he? New York Governor Mario Cuomo ended months of intense speculation tonight. He announced he will not make a bid for the Democratic presidential nomination. Cuomo prompted widespread speculation that he would be a candidate when he announced earlier this year that he was planning to visit 5 key Democratic primary states. His announcement tonight came during a radio call-in show. Cuomo told listeners he believes the Democratic Party offers many presidential candidates who can deal with the problems of the country. The White House is refusing to comment on reports the president did an about-face in his story about the Iran arms deal. The president reportedly gave the White House panel looking into the deal 2 versions of what happened. During his first interview with the Tower Commission, the president reportedly said he approved the initial arms sale in August of 1985 before it happened. But in a second interview, the president reportedly said he approved the deal only after learning that Israel had already sent weapons to Iran. Congressional leaders say they tend to believe the first version, which is similar to testimony from former National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane. They say the president changed his story after talking to his chief of staff, Donald Regan.
So I, and I think the members of the Intelligence Committee, came down on the side of Bud McFarlane's recollection rather than Don Regan's notes, his calendar, and that sort of thing.
Today, the Tower Commission interviewed McFarlane in the hospital where he's recovering from an apparent suicide attempt. McFarlane took a Valium overdose on the day he was supposed to testify before the Tower Commission for a second time. The commission's findings are due out next Thursday. For Soviet dissident Natan Anatoly Sharansky, being behind bars is nothing new. Until his release last year, he had spent many years as a prisoner in the Soviet Union. Today in New York, just outside the Soviet UN mission, Sharansky symbolically went behind bars along with his wife and mother. They were protesting the imprisonment of other dissidents who have not been allowed to leave the Soviet Union and emigrate to Israel. Said Kerensky, it's not only the case of 1 or 2 or 3 refuseniks, it's a national struggle. A grim search at a Colorado ski resort today. Rescuers found 2 more victims of yesterday's avalanche near the Breckenridge Resort. One body was found yesterday. As many as 300 volunteers with metal probes braved 0-degree weather to look for bodies. With the threat of more avalanches, the search was called off for the evening, but officials say 2 more skiers may be buried beneath the snow. Witnesses say the victims were skiing in a dangerous area that was clearly marked off limits.
USA Tonight's Health Beat is brought to you by Advil.
For years, condom ads on television were strictly taboo. That was before condoms were touted as one of the most effective protections against AIDS. Today, ABC became the first network to agree to run public service announcements about condoms. The announcements stress that condoms can prevent the spread of AIDS. They say nothing about the use of condoms for birth control. NBC and CBS refused to air the announcements but gave the stations they own permission to run the advertisements. 2 New York stations said they would do just that, but only during late evening hours. New York has the highest number of AIDS cases in the country.
USA Tonight's Health Beat was brought to you by Advil.
You know, as much as I love my job, sometimes it gives me a headache. But I never go home with one. I used to take aspirin or Tylenol. Well, now I take Advil. You see, Advil has a non-prescription strength with a medicine in the prescription brand Motrin. Just 1 Advil is as effective as 2 regular strength Tylenol. Look, I don't want to go home with a headache. Advil sure works for me.
Advil. Tablets and new caplets. Advanced medicine for pain.
If you're 45 to 74, perhaps you've given some serious thought to the kind of suffering your spouse and loved ones may have to go through after your death. Well, there's not much you can do to prepare them for the sorrow that follows, but there is something you can do to prevent the financial crisis that may result. It's called Security Life, and it's a remarkable new plan that provides solid life insurance protection to your family when they need it the most. This is a life insurance plan you simply cannot be turned down for, no matter what your health is like. Sound good? Well, I think so. That's why I urge you to call today for your free information kit. It comes in the mail, so no agent will visit you now or ever. It only takes a couple of minutes to read in the privacy of your own home. But when you do, you'll find out for yourself how Security Life can give your family the protection they deserve at a price you can afford.
For your free information kit, call 1-800-233-0500.
Some pleas from Poland were answered. Today, the Reagan administration lifted the last of its 6-year-old economic sanctions against Poland. In doing so, the White House noted Poland's loosening of its grip on political dissenters. Polish church groups and labor unions had been urging the end to the trade restrictions. The Polish government says the sanctions have cost that country at least $15 billion. It's been 10 months since the world's worst nuclear accident, Chernobyl, the Soviet Union. This week, Soviet citizens got their first in-depth look at the damaged nuclear plant. A television documentary. Diana Kay reports.
This is Chernobyl's number 4 reactor, shot soon after last April's explosion. Until this week, only a few Russian scientists have been shown these dramatic scenes, which include enhanced views of the fire still burning around the graphite core. But now the Soviet public have seen the pictures too, in a documentary made by state-run television. 2 days after the explosion, and some 10,000 people have been taken out of the immediate area. But the 18-minute documentary castigates officials in the Ukraine for masking the scale of the disaster and for waiting 9 days to give full instructions to the population on how to avoid contamination. Families had to leave behind pet animals and many personal belongings. Some of the deserted homes were ransacked by looters, but others remained, an eerie testimony to the suddenness of the evacuation. In the hours after the explosion, volunteers worked strictly to the stopwatch as they struggled to contain the disaster. Just 2 minutes per person to get into each troubled spot and out again. A giant steel shroud now covers the radioactive debris, but monitoring must continue, perhaps for several centuries, for the toxicity of the debris will outlast the protective metal cover. 31 people have died so far as a result of the accident, many of them volunteers contaminated while fighting the fire and encasing the core. The documentary gives no details about health in the Ukraine since Chernobyl, nor speculates on cancer prospects for the future. These coal miners from near Moscow volunteered to come to Chernobyl to dig a tunnel to help stop a threatened meltdown of the reactor core in the days after the explosion, the so-called China syndrome. It was 2 weeks before they knew they'd won. The report, entitled Warning, says its message is not just for the Russians, but for all the world.
And coming up next, it's got headlights and a grill. It's not a car, it's a building.
We have lost contact with your jets. We see no chutes and no debris.
An unexplainable disappearance of 2 U.S. jets.
Do not acknowledge radio communication from this point on.
A top-secret nightmare.
Colonel, this is a matter of national security. That's getting to be a very thin umbrella.
Is now an Air Force cover-up.
My men and I are being held against our will.
Glenn Ford and David Soul.
There's no way in the world we can explain this.
The disappearance of Flight 412. Saturday night at 7 on Channel 9.
These days, if you walk into a car dealer with $99 in your pocket, all you'll be shown is the showroom door.
Not at Central Motors, Evanston's big dealer. That's because at Central Motors, $99 down or $99 a month gets you your choice of a Mitsubishi Colt, Renault Alliance, Chrysler Horizon or Sundance, or Volkswagen Fox or Golf.
See how far your money will go when you go to Evanston's big dealer, Central Motors, 1930 Ridge Avenue in Evanston.
Can children register and vote? No. Who can register and vote? David?
Grown-ups can register and vote.
It's true. Children cannot register and vote, but this election is about their future. If you are registered to vote, call today, 427-VOTE, for information on where to vote on Election Day.
Your vote is our voice.
This election message is brought to you by the Midwest Voter Registration Education Project. USA Tonight, brought to you by the General Foods Corporation.
Television evangelist Oral Roberts says he has beaten the devil and overcome a depression that followed a rather unusual donation appeal. In January, Roberts warned he would die if he could not raise $4.5 million by March 31st. Roberts says negative reaction plunged him into a deep depression. But now Roberts says he fully expects to reach his financial goal and promises he will live past March 31st. In our USA Tonight notebook, Make My Day. It's a line uttered in a Clint Eastwood movie. He dared criminals to force him to pull the trigger. Now a state legislator in Oklahoma City is sponsoring what's being called the Make My Day law. It would allow residents to use deadly force against intruders if the resident has reasonable belief, no matter how slight, that the intruder is there to cause physical harm. The Make My Day law would replace an Oklahoma law that puts more of an onus on the resident if an intruder is killed. Now deadly force can be used only if there is imminent danger to residents. Senator Charles Ford, the Make My Day sponsor, argues that when someone confronts an intruder in their home, they don't have time to determine what he's there for. At least one state legislator feels that the day has come for a Make My Day law. The Los Angeles area is already host to a number of architectural oddities, including a giant hot dog, a mammoth chili bowl, and an immense stack of records. Now, the finishing touches are being completed on the newest oddball entry in Tarzana, California. It's pink, it's 2 stories high, and its creator thinks it typifies America. Yes, it's a building shaped like a big American luxury car. The building, called Fleetwood Square, looks like an early 70s Cadillac, from the fender lights to its large radiator grille. Before it's finished, the building will sport fancy headlights and, of course, a license plate. Says architect Lee Oakes, Ventura Boulevard is about as American as you can get, and what's more American than a big luxury car? Although not everyone likes the concept, the building is attracting lots of stares and some tenants. Appropriately enough, its first leases went to an automobile showroom and a limousine service. Tomorrow, an inside view of the Iran-Iraq war. We'll talk with Congressman Robert Torricelli of New Jersey, who's just back from Iraq. And that's USA Tonight. I'm Morton Dean. Have a good night and a good day tomorrow.
Who are these guys?
It's the outrageous and irreverent look at the world of professional hockey. Paul Newman.